His face shines upon you, be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace.
Sing it again. The Lord bless you.
The Lord bless you and keep you.
Make his face shine upon you.
Be gracious to you. The
Lord turn his face towards you.
and give you peace.
Sing it, amen. Amen, amen. Sing it again, amen, yes. Amen. Amen. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And all will see how great is our God. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family and their children and their children and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you, he is with you. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family and your children and the children and the children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you, he is with you in the morning, in the evening, in your coming and your going and your weeping and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 he is for you. And amen, and amen. He's worthy of all praise. And my heart will sing how great is our God. The Lord bless you, sing it now.
The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you. Be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you
And give you peace.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us. It's a privilege to be speaking with you. My name is Garrison. I'm one of the pastors here at New Hope, and I wanted to tell you that coming up next week, the 21st, we're going to have an indoor service at 11 o'clock. So if you're waiting for us to have an indoor service again, it'll be a socially distanced and spread out at 11 a.m. on the 21st, next Sunday. We'll also still have our outdoor service at 9 a.m., so feel free to still come to that as well on Sunday. 9 a.m. outside, 11 a.m. Inside. So if you're waiting for us to have an indoor service, join us at 11 a.m. Next Sunday. But for this week, we're on this series called You're Not Far. And it's about when Jesus comes, his message, when he came, he preached to people and said that the kingdom of God is here. That God is near. That was his message that Jesus came to declare, that of announcing this new way of calling people into. That it was all about that God came near, that we don't come near to God through keeping a list of rules, that he came to us through the person of Jesus. And this new kingdom that Jesus came to establish was unlike any kingdom that they'd ever experienced before. It wasn't a kingdom that was manifested in buildings or palaces, and it wasn't even a religion. Yet Jesus came to establish a relationship. And it was just so difficult for people to get because they were waiting for a savior to deliver them from Roman occupation. They were waiting for a savior, a political savior, to give them freedom once again. But Jesus' way of coming was to not to deliver them necessarily from a political sense, but to deliver them in a spiritual sense from the power that kept them from God, was sin. That no longer did they have to keep a list of rules to be made right, but from this point forward, that they're made right by being with Jesus. That they don't have to necessarily have a religion anymore. But yet Jesus came to establish a relationship. And it was difficult for people to get, and I still think it's difficult for people to get now because people tend to create a religion out of this relationship. We want to create rules to follow. We want this formula to guide our lives. That's not what Jesus came to create. He didn't come to give us a new set of rules. They had rules. It didn't work, nor was that Jesus' intention. Jesus came to establish a relationship. But here's the thing. We want rules, don't we? We like rules. It's the same way our brains create habits. It's easy. It conserves energy. It's simple. We want to be handed this formula and say, just do this and everything will be good. But that's not what Jesus came to do. He didn't come to establish a new religion. He came to establish a relationship. And we know this. Relationships, they're sometimes messy. And rules are easy. But Jesus has come. He's to have our hearts, to be with us, not to somehow create this new rules that we have to follow. And that's what Jesus wants. That's what he came to do. He came to be with us, to have a relationship. But this was unlike anything that people in this day had ever experienced before. It was a completely different way of living. I recently heard a story of a man who had went to the doctor to see how long he would live. And he goes to the doctor to kind of get an estimate to see how long he'll live. And the doctor comes in with a clipboard and begins reading off a list of questions. He starts to read questions. This is what happened. He goes, the doctor says to this guy, he says, do you eat any sort of sweets or indulge in every now and then in unhealthy foods? And the patient said, no, I stick to a strict diet. He said, do you subject yourself to challenging situations that create stress? And the patient said, oh, no, not at all. The doctor said, okay, have you ever risked loving someone and in turn had your heart broken? The guy said, no. Do you at times feel anxiety about doing something new for the first time? They said, no. The guy said, no, I stick to what I know. The doctor said, do you have hobbies and do activities that are risky? He said, no. In fact, I don't do anything that scares me. The doctor said, have you ever stepped into the unknown and slowly had to rely on faith? The patient said, oh no, I only do things that I know what the result will be. Doctor said, okay. And the patient was feeling really good. He said it with excitement, doctor, okay, so how long will I live? And the doctor replies back, it doesn't really matter because you're not even living now. I think in some ways that can be us very easily. It's so easy to shrink back in fear instead of stepping out in faith. That whenever we feel fear, and you know this, it instinctively creates a sense of self-preservation, of trying to save and trying to maintain and protect instead of stepping out and doing something new. This way of life that Jesus came to establish wasn't about elevating ourselves to get power or security, but rather to lower ourselves in the service of others. That the way up is down. To get, you must give. To have influence, you must serve. And this was completely new to what anyone had thought of in that day. And this was the teaching that Jesus came to tell his disciples. In fact, he was talking to his disciples in the last days that he was here on this earth. And he was on his way to Jerusalem. And they were at the time north and towards the Sea of Galilee. And they were going south to Jerusalem. And on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus knew what was about to happen, that it was going to be in Jerusalem where he was going to be handed over to the authorities and crucified. And so he's talking and teaching to his disciples about what's going to happen, and furthermore telling them more about this life that he's calling them to live by. And he's talking to them on this journey down to Jerusalem, which was about 100 miles, which is equivalent to a 34-hour walk. Can you imagine walking 34 hours? Yeah. Well, this is what they were doing. And on the way down, Jesus begins to teach them. We have it recorded in Mark, the chapter 8. And this is the teaching that Jesus begins to tell them. He says, then Jesus began to tell them that the Son of Man must suffer many terrible things and be rejected by the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of the religious law. He would be killed, but 3 days later, he would rise from the dead. As he talked about this openly with his disciples, Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. Peter took him aside and like, hey, Jesus, hey, no. You don't need to die. No. Let's keep this thing going, right? I mean, can you blame him? I mean, after all, they believed that Jesus was the Messiah, that he was the king. And kings don't die. Kings deliver people from Roman occupation. Like, messiahs don't die. No, they're political heroes that are loved by all. And here's what I love about this, is that we have this letter that Peter is actually writing to Mark, and he's recording it. And Peter had every chance to write himself in a better light, and he doesn't. He just, you know why? Because it's what happened. It's what happened, and so he's recording what happened. And even when the person giving this information to write down is painting himself in a negative light. So this is what happens with Peter and Jesus, and so Jesus then responds to this. It says in verse 33 of chapter 8, Jesus turned around and looked at his disciples, then reprimanded Peter. Yeah, can you imagine being reprimanded by Jesus, right? Get away from me, Satan, he said. And this is the point. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's. You're seeing things wrong, Peter. You're not getting it right now. You're missing the point. You're seeing it all wrong. And how was Peter seeing it? He was seeing it from an aspect of self-preservation, of preserving what is, protecting what he had. In essence, he was living in the fear of losing what he had been given. Instead of allowing faith to motivate his response, he allowed fear to lead his reaction. I'm going to be honest with you. I've had that happen for me more times than I can count. Or more times than I would like to admit, where I've been controlled by fear and not faith. Maybe you've experienced this too. Like you've had this motivating faith within you to step out in a service role of some kind, whether it be here at New Hope in a ministry of some kind, or a volunteer role. And then all of a sudden, the second that you feel that faith leading you to do that, just fear creeps in and just causes you to shrink back and think, well, maybe they don't need me. I wouldn't really be good at that. I don't have skills. There's other people better than me. Or you have this faith motivating you to help a family that's in need, or maybe had just come home from the hospital, and you have this faith move to wanting to maybe just anonymously bless them with gift cards or a meal. And all of a sudden the fear creeps in and think, wow, maybe they don't want me to do that. Maybe that'll be intruding. I don't want them to feel awkward. Maybe I'll just let them be. Or you have this faith motivating you to possibly invite someone to an Easter service coming up on April 4th. We have 2 that are outside at 9 a.m. and 10:30. But all of a sudden when you think of that person that maybe that faith is leading you to invite with you, the fear creeps in, and you think, well, maybe, I don't know, I don't want them to feel awkward. Maybe that would offend them. Maybe our relationship would be weird after that. I don't want to do, I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. And we shrink back in fear. And instead of stepping out in the faith and believing that we serve a God who's the great sustainer and the great provider, we shrink back in fear, and we sequester ourselves in this life of self-preservation, thinking solely just about ourselves. And I guess this can be carried to the extreme. I've recently heard a story of a man who had worked his entire life and saved almost every penny he had ever made. And he told his wife as he was about to die, and he said, here's what I want you to do when I die. I want you to bury me with all the money I've ever made. And being the good wife she was, she said, okay, I'll do that. So that finally he had passed, and the day of his burial came, and they were by the gravesite, and what she had done is she got this giant box, and she put in it all the money that he had ever made. And right before they buried him, she put the box right in next to his casket. And so finally there was a friend that was with her, and that she said with shock, please tell me you didn't do what he asked you to do. Please tell me you didn't bury him with all the money he'd ever made. And she replied back, no, I did. He asked me to do that, and I promised him. She said, are you crazy? Why would you do that? She said, well, I told him I would. What I did was I took everything he had ever made, all the money he'd ever made, I put it in one account, and I wrote him a check. Yeah, good luck cashing that, right? All right, you ever heard the phrase, right? I've never seen a hearse with a trailer hitch, right? I've never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul, right? You can't take it with you, but nevertheless, we begin to live a life just in this mindset of self-preservation that's caused by fear. Because the inevitable result of all of our lives is death. Like the death rate in America is 100%. And we all know that. And so what happens is we respond to the fear of death with self-preservation instead of the thought of death motivating us to live each day to its fullest. And because of that, so many of us are never experience the life that Jesus came to give us. The life that he described in John 10:10 when he said, I've come to give you life, and life to the full. And this was the mindset that Peter was exhibiting when he was communicating to Jesus that he needed to preserve what was happening. And so what Jesus does is, and I think it's a great lesson for any parent or any leader, what Jesus does, instead of just addressing the situation itself, he begins to teach this principle that kind of overarches and motivates the decisions that he saw Peter making. And he teaches this principle and describes it later in Mark 8. He says, then calling the crowd to join his disciples, he said, like I love this, he's calling everybody together. Hey, everybody come here. Everybody come here, ready? You just see Jesus doing this. Okay, he's like frustrated, he's like, okay, come here people, let me teach you something. He says, if any of you want to be my follower, and everybody's like, I want to be the follower. Yes, I'm following you right now, Jesus. I am a follower. You're talking to me. He says, you must give up your own way and take up your cross and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you'll lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake and for the sake of the good news, you'll save it. Then he says that he's talking about take up your cross. He says like take up your cross and follow me. If he was talking about literally. Like now we use the whole take up your cross and follow me as this metaphor to a call to self-sacrifice. But then it was used as this literal description of death. And as the disciples were listening, they had imagined people that they had seen been crucified. They had smelled the crucifixions. They've seen the horrific nature of that death. And here they have their Messiah and their King telling them, take up your cross, die to yourself, follow me. Like, not only is Jesus saying that he's going to Jerusalem to do just that, but he's calling his disciples to do it with him. And not only that, but to add any more contrast to this situation that's happening. Just then, James and John, they're two brothers. And as Jesus is saying this, they approach Jesus with this request. Like as if there couldn't be any more contrast, right, with what Jesus is saying. James and John comes to him with this request. It says, then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, come over and spoke to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do us a favor. Here we go. What is your request, he asked. They replied, when you sit on your glorious throne, we want to sit in places of honor next to you, one on your right and one on your left. Hey, Jesus, I know you're talking about like going to Jerusalem and like suffering and like sacrificing. Hey, that's great. We're not really about that. What we want is when, like, all that's over and you're sitting on your, like, glorious throne. Did you catch it? Like, that's where we want to be. Like, we're not into the whole sacrifice thing. We just want the glory. We just want the power. We want the influence. We want the protection. We want the fame. We want the security. But we don't really for that whole sacrifice thing. And they missed it. They're missing the whole point. And then this is what Jesus does. Again, he like one last time, right? He's like, they're still not getting this. Like, what in the world? They've been with me all this time. So this is what Jesus does again. He gathers everybody together again. He says, okay, like, I'm going to tell you one more time, people, okay? I'm going to go over this one more time about what I'm about what my kingdom is. And this is what he says. But Jesus said to them, you don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink from this bitter cup of suffering I'm about to drink? Are you able to be baptized with the baptism of suffering I must be baptized with? And then he tells all the people this. As he gets the people together, talking about how his kingdom's different. He says, so Jesus called them together and said, you know the rulers of in this world, they lord over people, they lord over their people. The officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you, it will be different. But among you, it'll be different. But among you, it'll be different. Don't miss that. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. For whoever wants to be first among you must be the slave of everyone else. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others, and to give his life for a ransom for many. Among you it'll be different, but among you it'll be different. And I just imagine as like James and John and the disciples are like sitting there, they're like, oh, that didn't go as we thought. That just did not go according to how we thought would happen. Like John is telling James, like, James, why did we do that? And James telling John, like, I know, right? They didn't get it. But Jesus is explaining, listen, my kingdom is different. It's not anything that you're used to. My kingdom is different than almost anything this world is seeing. My kingdom is different than anything that you're used to. My kingdom is different than the political structure that you're accustomed to following. My kingdom is different than this religion that you're used to seeing. My kingdom is different than the authorities or the leaders that you're used to being around. This is different. I'm doing something completely new, completely different. That the way up is down. If you want to get, you give. If you want influence, you serve. And if you want to experience the life that I've come for you to experience, you serve and you give your life for others. That's where significance lies. Like the world says, that the higher you go, the more power you'll have. But Jesus says, no, the lower you go, the more influence you'll receive. Like the world says that hide your insecurities, present this image of strength. But Jesus says, no, you rejoice in your weaknesses, for there my power is made perfect. The world says, keep it to yourself, keep what you have to yourself. And Jesus says, no, it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. The world says, hoard things for yourself because you never know what'll happen. You want to be safe. But Jesus says, no, listen, I take care of the lilies of the field and the birds of the air. How much more will I take care of you? The way that Jesus has come to show us is the way that leads to life that is abundant, a life that is filled with joy. that's different what the world may present to you. So step out in faith. Don't shrink back in fear and try to self-preserve, but use what God has given you, the platforms of influence that he has placed you in, the resources that he's given you to live each day to serve someone else. And as you do, you experience the life he came for you to give. I heard this story. It was actually a letter that was published in the LA Times. A family and the siblings was at their mother and father's house, and their mother had passed away, and they were cleaning out her closet. And when they entered the closet, they saw a large amount of clothes that still had the tags on them. And they went to their father and they said, "Dad, what are all these clothes with the tags on them that Mom had?" And he said, "Oh, those were clothes that Jan was saving for a special occasion. I guess she won't be able to wear those now." And the daughter was so impacted by this experience that she wrote this letter to her friends, and that was later published in the LA Times. And this is the letter that she wrote. She said, "I'm not saving anything from now on for special occasions. We use our good china and crystal for every special event that happens, such as losing a pound, getting the sink unstopped, or the first flower bloom of spring. I wear my good blazer to the market. I'm not saving my good perfume for special parties, but I'm wearing it for the clerks in the hardware store and the tellers at the bank. The words of someday and the phrase of one of these days are losing their grip on my vocabulary. If it's worth seeing or hearing or doing, I want to see and hear it and do it now. I'm trying very hard not to put off, hold back, or save anything that would add laughter and luster to our lives or the lives of others. Every morning when I open my eyes, I tell myself that every day of my life is a special occasion." Jesus said it like this: if you want to save your life, then lose yourself in the service of others every day. But you want to lose your life, live in the fear of preserving everything for yourself. I want to give you 2 steps that we can do to walk away here and begin to live this life that Jesus called us to live with and live in. Number 1 is this: make it a goal every day to encourage at least one person. Just one person. Whether it be a text that you send, a letter that you write, a phone call that you make, an email that you send off, make it a goal every day to encourage someone around you. And as you do, what will happen is that you'll be encouraged. That if you're feeling sad and you need someone to uplift you, make it your goal to uplift someone else, to encourage at least one person every single day. Second thing is this: set aside a sum of money above and beyond your normal giving here to the church and give it away. Now, this could be as little as $5. If you don't have $5, make it a dollar. But set aside a certain money where you are intentional about seeing the needs of someone else and intentionally give it away. It's not money to spend on yourself, but you give it away to someone in need. And you watch that as you begin to lose yourself in thinking about others, I guarantee you that you'll experience a joy that you had never before. Jesus said, you want to lose your life? Live in the fear of trying to save it. But you want to save your life? Live your life in the faith in serving others. Thanks.